So Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya to all of you. This is the talk on what is called the Buddhanusati, and in Pali it is called Buddhanusati. And on the occasion of this Buddha Purnima that we had last week, and the celebration of the 2 years of the virtual reading group that we have been conducting from last 2 years to commemorate these two occasions, we are having this special class on a topic which is very important for the Buddha Jayanti, is remembering the Buddha, Buddhanusati. So we all know that what is called the Dhamma began with the Buddha. And it's very interesting to look at the journey of the Buddha. In fact, it's his life itself can be the practice of Dhamma. But unfortunately, not a lot is known about the Buddha and his biographies. There is a scattered information about the Buddha in the Pali Tripitakas, and then we know that a lot of biographies has come into existence. Like there is a Buddha Charitra written by Ashwaghosh, and there are in very many forms the biographies of the Buddha available to us. Recently, some of the great scholars have tried to attempt to really understand the life of the Buddha, and we are getting as near to understand whatever is available on the life of the Buddha. This lack of information on the life of the Buddha was also noted by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. He said that the Buddha has taught about his Dhamma, Buddha has talked about many things, but he has hardly spoken about his life. So it's very difficult to have the biography of the Buddha. In fact, Babasaheb Ambedkar says that in the first Sangiti, the question about the Sutta was asked, the question about Vinaya was asked, but nobody cared to ask about the life of the Buddha himself. And if they had asked it, we would have had a very comprehensive biography of the Buddha, which today we do not have. And therefore, we need to look at very many sources to understand the life of the Buddha, the biography of the Buddha himself. So having said this, is not difficult to understand who is the Buddha. So let's begin with the very word Buddha itself. What does it mean? The Buddha was not called Buddha before his enlightenment. He was Siddhartha Gautama. And then we have very many names of the Buddha like Sugata and Tathagata and Bhagwa, so on and so forth. So many epithets of the Buddha. Shakyamuni, and so on and so forth. We can enumerate a lot of epithets of the Buddha, but nothing captures the very essence of who the Buddha was, or what is the Buddha, or what is it to be the Buddha. And unless we understand this word Buddha itself, we do not get to understand what does the Buddha stand for. So this word Buddha comes from the word Buddha or Bujja. And it comes from a verb, bujjati, which means to know, which means to understand. And the Buddha is the main word, but you cannot say Buddhata, so it becomes Buddha. So this is the etymology of the word Buddha. The Buddha is somebody who knows. In a traditional way, we can define the Buddha as yo bujjati, so buddho. The one who knows is the Buddha. So whenever we utter this very word Buddha, we begin to see the essence of who is the Buddha. And our mindfulness itself starts when we anytime utter the word Buddha. The Buddha is a very powerful word. Now it has become a common noun. But if we understand the etymological meaning of the word Buddha, the word itself is powerful. There are many stories in the Pali text. Particularly, there is a famous story of Anathapindaka. One, he heard the name Buddha, and automatically his faith, his saddha was turned into. So you can understand the power of the word Buddha itself, because it makes us mindful of who the Buddha really is. And Buddha is somebody who knows, who understands, who has penetrated the reality. So that is about the word Buddha. The word Sati, as it is true of many different words in Pali language, because those words have different interpretations depending on the context. The word Sati is considered to be a very important word in Buddhism. And Buddha himself says that the Sati is the only one path, a narrow path to enlightenment. Sati iti ekayano maggo. It's narrow path to the enlightenment. It's a singular path to the enlightenment. But what does the meaning of the word Sati entail? What does it mean to know the word Sati? In the traditional English languages, the Sati is translated as mindfulness. Sometimes people translate it as awareness. And on so many ways, the word Sati is translated. But here, for our purpose, we are going to take the meaning of the word Sati as remembering and internalizing the meaning with wisdom. I'm going to repeat the definition of the word Sati again. Sati means remembering and internalizing the meaning with wisdom. So you see, the Buddha has asked us to guard against the words. He says that the words are very elusive, and the words can have a very dramatic effect on the world and on the people. The language plays its very oppressive role on the human mind. And that's why in a very beautiful sutta called Nama Sutta, Bhagavad says that Namam Sabbam Adabhasi. Name overpowers all. The words overpower all. Nama bhiyo na vijjati. Nothing surpasses the names. So when we look at the word Nama, it has also got very different meanings. Like when we look at the word Nama in the context of Nama Rupa, it has a very different psychological meaning. But when we look at the word Nama in terms of the words, in terms of the process of naming, in terms of denoting whatever we experience in terms of the sounds, it is called Nama. And the Buddha says that the name overpowers all, everything. We are dominated by the language, we are dominated by the words, we are dominated by the concepts, and therefore the Buddha will caution us against the use of the word. And therefore, I think this definition of Sati is very interesting. Remembering and internalizing the meaning with wisdom. So whatever words we speak, whatever concept we try to understand, we have to understand it with the wisdom. Otherwise, they become just words, and they tend to oppress us all the time. Even we have to be cautious about the concepts and the words taught by the Buddha himself. And I think that's very, very important for all of us to take into consideration the overpowering nature of the language, the overpowering nature of the words, the overpowering nature of the concepts. And therefore, we have to be able to cultivate what is called Sati, which means the skill of remembering and internalizing the meaning with wisdom. And when we talk about the use of the word sati, we have very many satis in our meditation, or in the Buddhist tradition. Let's not call it meditation tradition. For example, there is a Buddhanusati, there is Dhammanusati, there is Sanghanusati, there is Silanusati, there is Anapanasati, and there are so many ways by which the sati has been talked about. There is one aspect of sati which is called Kayagata Smriti. Kayagata Smriti, the remembrance of the body which has gone, the contemplation of the decay of the body, remembering all the time, internalizing the meaning of what happens, to the body. The Buddha says that this life is so fickle that we can give up this body anytime. That is the nature of the world. Now, having said this, when I was talking about the meaning of the word Buddha in terms of yo bujjati so Buddha, one who knows, one who understands is the Buddha. And we know that the Buddha has attained to the reality, he has attained to the truth, and he has spoken very categorically of the experience that he had. And in the Pali text, the Buddha has defined, described as to what happened beneath the Bodhi tree. And very interestingly, we find an interesting discussion in the Buddha and his Dhamma written by Baba Sahib Ambedkar as to how the Buddha attained to Bodhi. The various stages of his mind, and ultimately his mind becoming so supple, so pliable, so malleable, that the Buddha could focus his mind on the objects, on the questions that mattered. And that description comes from the Pali text as to how Buddha, when his mind was completely still, when his mind was completely clear, how he directed his mind to the questions that mattered to him. And one by one, Buddha understood, resolved the problems, the questions that the Buddha was facing in the during the process of enlightenment. So Buddhatva is not something that has been given by some external agency. There are many stories abound in the Buddhist scriptures, particularly in Mahayana scriptures, that Buddha was already a cosmic Buddha, and Shakyamuni Buddha was just a manifestation of it. May it be so, but the Buddha himself has given us a hope to the humanity. He said that the truth, or the Dhamma, or the Bodhi is Sayang Abhidnya. Means I through my efforts, I have known the truth. So Buddha himself is giving the testimony that the reality that he has experienced has not been bestowed upon by any conspiracy theory, or by any gods, or by any external thing outside himself. There is a very beautiful sort of words in Pali text. Ubbe ananusutesu dhammesu. Chakkhum utpadi. Jnanam utpadi. Aloko utpadi. Very powerful words. So, Ubbe ananusutesu dhammesu means the reality which was unheard before, the eye emerged. Chakkhum utpadi. Jnanam utpadi. The knowledge, emerged, and the light emerged. Alokam utpadi. So this, when we talk about the Buddha, we cannot separate the Buddha from his experience of what is called the Bodhi. And he has himself said that, he has achieved what he has achieved through what is called Purusa Dhammena. Purusha Viryena, the efforts of the human being, the effort of a man, the effort of a person. And Purusha Parakamena. Parakram, we know this is a common word in English, in our Indic languages, all over the places, the word is common. It comes from the Pali word Parakama. So through his own efforts, through his own striving, through his own, I would say, heroism, the Buddha achieved the truth. He saw the truth as it was. And when he saw the truth as he was an awakened one. He was the Buddha. He was the one who knows. So I think this is a very interesting sort of the discussion on the Buddha that comes in the Pali text. Like particularly, when I was speaking about that Pubbe Ananusutyesu Dhammesu, means the reality or the Dhamma which was not heard before, in that Chakkum Utpadi, Jnanam Utpadi, Paya Utpadi, Alokam Utpadi. These are very beautiful sort of a gradation of what really happened to the Buddha when he has applied his mind, which was focused, which was pure mind, to the problems in his hands. And ultimately, what is that the Buddha was awakened to? And this is very interesting to know what is that to which the Buddha was awakened to. So the first thing that the Buddha was awakened to, that there is no self, anatta. And this awakening has been put very beautifully in the very second sutta that Buddha spoke about, Anattalakhan Sutta, where the Buddha goes through the list of the 5 skandhas, and he says that they are nitya, anitya. And then he says that whatever is anitya cannot belong to you. And the Buddha ends up his understanding of anatta in these very beautiful words, which I'm going to read for you. Nayetang mama, na eso aham asmi, na meso atta. Very beautiful cadence of the word that we see here. Nayetang mama. The Buddha realized that the 5 skandhas that we experience all the time are not mine. Nayetang mama. Na eso aham asmi. I am not this. I am not the skandhas. And nameso atta, that is not myself. And the Buddha realized that the self that is created by language, that is created by culture, which we can even say identity on the deep down psychological level, the feeling of I, the feeling of me, and the feeling of an identity. In the Buddhist context, the identity is called mana. Ahang, mama, and mana. Ahankar, manankar, and mana anusaya. So we are always revolving around these 3 things: mama, aham, and atta. And the Buddha says that under the Bodhi tree, he has understood that such is not the case, that there is no self that we can find in reality. Now, when we say that there is no self, it can become very scary for a lot of people, because since we are born till we die, we are in the grief of the self, or the concept of self, or the designation of a self, or an identity. And we all the time crave for being. We always try to be. That is called bhavatanha, craving to be, craving not to be, and craving for the sensuality, the sensual pleasures. This is all the time going on in our mind. Why? Because at the base of it, there is a false perception of atta. There's a false perception of atta. And in a very beautiful, I think, 3 lines, the Buddha explained that, there is nothing to fear of. Because whatever that doesn't exist, why should we crave for it? Why we should be fearful of losing something that doesn't exist at all? Why do we cherish something which is not there, however hard we try to find out? And that's what the Buddha found out through the inquiry, that the atta that we perceive all the time, the self that we try to perceive all the time, it's not there. And that's what the Buddha says, that beautiful 3 words, which captures the entire Buddhism in terms of asati na paritasati. The Buddha says, asati na paritasati. Asati. Sati means is. Asati means there is not. Asati means there is not. Very profound word. It doesn't exist. Na paritasati. Tassa has many meanings like Krishna, or craving for, or becoming fearful of. So the Buddha is not craving for something that doesn't exist. The Buddha is not fearful because he doesn't crave for something that don't exist. And this is what a very profound sort of awakening that the Buddha had. And when he inquired further into the reality, with his mind fully focused, devoid of all this conceptualization, the Buddha realized that the very deep teaching of what is called the paticca samutpad. The Buddha understood that how the misperception or everything arises depending on the causes and conditions. And he saw the whole chain and the whole link of how the suffering arises depending on ignorance, avidya, which is also called moha, which also means not able to see the way it is, which means that seeing the atta where it doesn't exist. It's very profound sort of understanding, the gradual development of the understanding of the Buddha. And finally, he understands what is called the paticca samutpad. He understands the causes and conditions. He understands that nothing is created by God. He understands that nothing is coming out, all of a sudden into existence. He understands that, there is a law. There is a law called paticca samutpad. And he understands that there is a specific law and there is a particular law. There is a general theory, and then there is a specific contextual theory of paticca samutpad. And then he goes into the specific contextual theory of, the understanding of paticca samutpad, where we know very famously the Buddha has given the 12 nidanas. That avidya leads to sankhara. Sankhara means flow, flowing into. Avidya means not able to see the way it is, not able to see the reality of the anicca, of the anatta, and of the dukkha. So I think that when the Buddha, in the night of his enlightenment, has understood these all profound truths, he experienced them directly, and because he knew them directly, he understood the truth of anatta and paticca samutpad directly. He became the Buddha. It's a very simple definition of who is the Buddha. So now the topic today is like the Buddhanusati is Dhamma. So we are all practicing the Dhamma in order to become the Buddha. Meaning thereby that we are trying to know exactly what is the reality. We are trying to aspire to become the Buddha. And I think that is a very important difference between the other religions and Buddhism. In Buddhism, the Buddha has said that you all can become the Buddha. And he says that through his own efforts, the Buddha has become what he was. Through his own heroic deeds, through his own efforts, through his own energy, the Buddha was able to become the Buddha. And he said that anybody who similarly follows the path shown by him can become the Buddha. Therefore, Baba Ambedkar has beautifully talked about this in terms of the Buddha as Mokshadatta or Margadatta. So if we all aspire to cultivate this remembering of the Buddha as to how he became the Buddha, through what way he became the Buddha, what was the method that the Buddha practiced. And it's not easy, it's a Buddha said it needs heroic deeds. If we look at the Buddha's life for the attainment of the truth, the Buddha has suffered a lot. He has gone to the forest in the seclusion. He has gone to the difficult places, dangerous places. He lived in the forest where the forests were bound by the tigers, the lions, leopards, and so on and so forth. And the Buddha has really gone into, he has thrown his life into knowing the truth, and finally he discovered the truth. So the efforts that the Buddha has made Maybe we might not to have make the similar efforts the way our Lord has made, because he has already given us a very systematic gradual teaching for us to realize the reality. So when we go into the discussion further, and I'm going to go into the discussion on anatta furthermore, so that we will have some interesting points clear beforehand. So the very interestingly, the Buddha, while teaching to his son Rahula, he gives a very profound teaching to Rahula. And while teaching to Rahula, he says that by 3 ways we should not cultivate the self. And I find this very, very profound, because I think that also captures the essence of Buddhism. So by 3 ways we shouldn't perceive the other human beings. So what are the 3 ways by which we shouldn't perceive the other human beings? Seyo aham asmi. Many a times we contemplate in our minds that Seyo aham asmi, which means I am better than them. All the time, because we cherish this very subtle sense of self. All the time when we look at other human beings, we have this perception that in Pali the Buddha called Seyo aham asmi. I am better than them. Sadiso aham asmi. Sadiso means just like me. Sadiso aham asmi, the same as me. And sometimes we perceive other people as Hino aham asmi. I am inferior than them. So either we think that we are superior to other people, or we are equal to them, or we are what is called inferior to them. And the Buddha teaches Rahula not to follow these perceptions. It means that every human being is unique in their context, in their ways, in their understanding. They are unique. So I think the twin ways by which we can look at the doctrine or the reality of Paticca Samutpada is very important. And just to recapitulate, I'm going to read them again. The Buddha says when he examined his skandhas, he found that they are empty. Shunyata. Then he found that animitta, they are beyond signless. You cannot assign them the signs. We cannot designate them by words. We cannot designate them by the names. We cannot designate them by the forms. That is what the Buddha realized. And Buddha realized anicchata. 3 things he realized. He realized anicchata, he realized what is called animittata, signlessness, and shunyata, the emptiness, the hollowness of it. And therefore, when Buddha contemplated on the 5 skandhas, he found that na etang mama, na eso aham asmi, na meso attati. This is what the Buddha found. And to Venerable Rahul, his own son, the Buddha taught that never indulge into this kind of thinking or thoughts like Seyo aham asmi, I am better than you, I am better than them. Sadiso aham asmi, I'm as you are. Hino aham asmi, I'm inferior to you. Don't indulge into these thoughts. And the great Rahula used to describe his father in a very unique way. And that almost captures what is the Buddha for us. So Rahul called Buddha Ukkadharo Manusana. The Buddha is the torch bearer of humanity. It's a very profound sort of the words or phrase which Rahul used for the Buddha. He says that he is the torch bearer of humanity. Now, what does it mean? We have seen the phrase that when the Buddha has attained to the truth, the alokam utpadi, the light was, light emerged. The light emerged. And here the same words that the Buddha is the light of the humanity. We know that Edward Arnold has written a book called Light of Asia. And, Buddha is not just the light of Asia. As Baba Ambedkar said, Buddha is the light of the world. He's the light of the universe. He's the torch bearer of the humanity. He's the one who is showing the path, one who is marching ahead, who has already marched ahead, and he's able to show us the path. So this discussion, I think, is very, very important for us to understand what is it to be the Buddha. So what I thought today, that some of the characteristics of the Buddha I'm going to enumerate. Particularly the characteristic is that the Buddha has a very unique ability to stand out for himself. He never became the part of the crowd. So once the Buddha was giving a discourse, or he was involved in a debate and discussion, and the episode goes like this, that he had an argument with a protagonist. So when the Buddha asked him if he really believed such a thing, I'm not going to go into what thing that Buddha was talking about. The protagonist replied, not only do I believe it, but this large crowd does too. So there were apparently thousands of people sitting, and this man was debating with the Buddha, and he was saying that it is not that I don't believe it, but also this whole entire crowd does not believe it, probably making a sweeping gesture towards the audience as he did. This appeal to majority opinion did not impress the Buddha. So what does it show? That we always try to follow what is called the herd psychology or the crowd psychology. We always try to politically correct. We always try to become the part of the crowd. But here, look at what the Buddha does. This appeal to majority opinion did not impress the Buddha, who responded. The Buddha responded, what has this large crowd got to do with it? Confine yourself to what you believe. So we always give the excuses of the crowd, the what is going on around in the world. But the Buddha is asking, it has nothing to do with the crowd. Tell me, confine yourself to what you believe. What do I believe? What do I want? How do what is my belief system? How does that belief system affects me? And with an argument with a Brahmin Esukari, and there is a very interesting note in Baba Sahib's notebook about this Esukari Sutta, where this Brahmin Esukari addressed Buddha as the Shudra. But here, the Brahmin Esukari confidently asserted to the Buddha that according to what his religion taught, his caste was superior and other castes were obliged to render service to Brahmins. The Buddha punctured this conceit by asking, and does the whole world agree with the Brahmins? The Brahmins claim that they are superior than others, and the Buddha is asking a question to Esukari. Do you think that the whole world agrees with what you are saying? That's what the Buddha asked. That does the whole world agrees with what you are saying? And I think that's very interesting sort of a way to look at the things as to, and does the whole world agree with the Brahmins that they are superior? Nonplussed by this, Esukari had to admit that it did not. So what, you see the way the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught in a way that didn't hurt people. The Buddha taught in a way that he tried to understand the mind of the person before him. He was not swayed by what is called the psychology of the masses. He was not swayed by anything, which was not true, which didn't accord to the reality that the Buddha experienced. And I think it's very interesting that the Buddha is always asking, what do you think? Tom kim manatta? And when the other person expresses their mind, the Buddha will correct their understanding, or if their understanding is correct, the Buddha will agree with that. That's how the Buddha operated. So I think this is a very interesting sort of the way by which the Buddha taught that, we all, each of us, have not to get swayed by the herd psychology or the crowd psychology. So the Buddha says that, do you stand for yourself? What do you stand for? What do you stand for? And I think That is what is the beauty of the Buddha. So we have to remember these qualities of the Buddha. We have to remember the way Buddha taught, the way Buddha understood, and how he communicated his understanding. About the Buddha, there are a few stories that I thought I would relate to you when we are talking about how remembering the Buddha is practicing the Dhamma. So there is a story of Nandaka. So once the Buddha was talking with Nandaka, a senior member of the Lichavi ruling council. So Nandaka was a very senior bureaucrat. Just as the talk finished, Nandaka's servant, apparently anxious to get away, whispered to him that it was time for his bath. So his servant told to Nandaka that it is time for him to take his bath. To which Nandaka replied, "Enough now, I say. With that outer washing, being washed inwardly by confidence in the Lord is sufficient." You see, so this communicates that, the inner washing that Nandaka is talking about, which arises. How? By having the confidence in the Lord, by having the confidence in the Buddha's teachings, by having the confidence in the Buddha himself. So whenever we reflect on the Buddha, when we remember the Buddha, when we think about his qualities, when we think about his Dhamma, when we think about his teachings, we are automatically getting inner wash. That's the inner bathing which we are getting all the time. So I am going to read Nandaka's reply again. "Enough now, I say, with that outer washing." Too much of outer things now. Being washed inwardly by confidence in the Lord is sufficient for me. And furthermore, when Sariputra met Nakulapita and noticed how composed he looked, he said to him, "I assume that today you have had a face-to-face talk with the Lord." Nakulapita replied, "How could it be otherwise, sir? I have just now been sprinkled with the nectar of the Lord's Dhamma." You see, that is the beauty of the Buddha. When we reflect on him, when we think about him, when we think about his teachings, it creates a kind of the inner washing, and it sprinkles that nectar of, or what is called the amrut or amata. And of course, the Buddha has, when we remember the Buddha, one of the qualities of the Buddha that we have to remember in our context is that non-quarreling. So when we are mindful of the Buddha, we have to keep this teaching of non-quarreling. There's a very beautiful mudra like this of the Buddha. And it is said that no non-quarreling mudra. The Buddha is not quarreling with anybody. He says the whole entire world quarrels with me, but I have no quarrel with anybody. Why is that? Because the Buddha has a very clear perception of the reality. He has a very clear understanding of the reality, and therefore the Buddha has no quarrel with the world. And wherever there is a quarrel, the Buddha said that he's not there. He's not there. And there is a story in the Pali text which shows that when there was a quarrel between the monks, two groups of monks in Shravasti, the Buddha just left and he went to jungle. He didn't stay there. He was quiet. And here is, he says that if you quarrel with each other, it's going to create a lot of difficulties for the people, for yourself and for the other people. So there is a lot that we can talk about when we talk about the Buddhanusati as the Dhamma practice. Now, what is the Dhamma? Dhamma is the path that leads us towards the Buddha, that makes us the Buddha. So Buddha was already a Buddha. He had already walked out his own path. He had already gone there. He has gone to enlightenment. He has understood the way it is, and he has very categorically had taught us that it is not about some kind of the external agency. It is not about some kind of the divine revelation, or it is not anything to related with any god. It is about the human efforts. It is about human parakram, the heroicness of the human being. It is about the efforts. And he has known the reality by himself. Likewise, we all can know the reality by ourselves. And that is the great message of the Buddha. And when we when we talk about this of Buddha's Dhamma today, the entire biography of the Buddha, if we study, we can see how the Buddha has walked his own path. There are very many discourses. There are many Pali texts in the Buddhist tradition and in other Buddhist tradition, and we all need to be mindful of the teachings of the Buddha. We call it Dhammanusati, isn't it? But the most important, I think, when we celebrate the Vesak Jayanti, the Vesak, the Buddha Jayanti, or the Vesak festival, it's very important for us to remember the Buddha all the time. It's very important for us to think about the Buddha all the time. So when we are thinking about the Buddha, we are not thinking about some, some kind of, God. We are thinking about Buddha, Buddha, one who knows. And accordingly, we are also striving to know. We are also striving in our own ways to awaken our eyes, to open our eyes, to be our own light, to generate that wisdom within, to generate those, the quality of freedom, the fearlessness that the Buddha had, all the qualities that the Buddha had, the quality of communication, the quality of not getting involved too much into words, talking in a way that will emancipate others and himself. So the takeaway from what I talked today is that the Buddha is the ultimate door to the Dhamma practice. The more we know about the Buddha, the more we begin to understand how he practiced the Dhamma. The more we know about the Dhamma, the more we know the Buddha. And it goes on till we become the Buddha himself. And when we become the Buddha ourselves, whatever we do is the Dhamma. So whatever the Buddha did throughout after his awakening was the Dhamma. So his daily life is his being in the world, he's going for arms around in the world, his discourses, his debates, his Dhamma talks, his very microscopic analysis of certain certain philosophies, his comparative study of the religions of that time, his concern for the equality, his concern for the equality of the man and women, his concern for a society which is beyond race and caste, his concern for a political system that will benefit everybody and not cause any harm to the world, and so on and so forth. So I think this is enough for today, and with this I will conclude that the way I began with the discussion today, that to be mindful of the Buddha, to remember the Buddha, to internalize the meaning with wisdom. So we have to understand the Buddha, what exactly the Buddha means by by wisdom, by bringing that mind, that light within us to know the Buddha. And if we do it constantly, we will be walking the same path that the Buddha has walked, and eventually we will understand the way Buddha has understood and has become the Buddha himself. With this, I stop. Thank you so much. Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya. So I think, Alkatai, that's enough for today.